Hello and welcome to the G3 Pulse podcast. Our guest today is Steve Rogers, CEO and founder of Playbook Fusion and previously long-time Chief Commercial Officer at Inspired Gaming, or Inspired Entertainment, should I say. Steve, pleasure to have you on. Thanks for coming.
All right, thanks a lot. Thanks, William. Thanks for inviting me on.
So the obvious place to start is to ask what's the story behind Playbook Fusion and what's inspired you to launch a new game studio?
So the story behind Playbook Fusion really is myself spotting a gap in the market from my experience at Inspired Entertainment previously in the gambling space, working with people from the games industry and understanding how game mechanic work, particularly for console games, video games, and trying to bring those two things together to create a new genre of product that will appeal to the mass audience of mainly sports bettors and virtual sports bettors who are existing in the online ecosystem.
And what would you say the biggest challenge that Playbook Fusion is facing right now, and how are you tackling it?
So at the moment, we're in the game design phase. We're just about to start the development phase. So really the purpose of bringing together the games industry and the gambling industry, really getting the right bits of both of those things together. Clearly, we're going into the regulated market. So having a strong understanding of what it's going to take to get this game live, partnerships, regulation, certification, all the kind of stuff that you need in the gambling industry. But also allowing the games developers to have that creative freedom and the designers to have the creative freedom to express themselves and come up with something new and innovative, because that's obviously the whole purpose of the business. So right now it's more about deciding what we're not going to do in the first game, rather than because it's kind of a blank canvas to a large degree. So we have to be focused on our strategy and our delivery, letting the creative guys do their thing. But now we're into the development phase. So really it is about making a game design that's going to give us everything we want, but it obviously isn't going to take years and years to develop. So it's kind of that management of those two things together. Really, that's where we're at the moment.
And you've brought together a team from kind of the video gaming side as well as the gambling side. Yeah. So I'm curious to know what the pitch was to those who are coming from outside the betting industry to join this venture.
To be fair, the people that I've got in from the game industry have some kind of interest in gambling. So they're not people who've got to have no interest and no knowledge of gambling. But the main thing for me is that they come from a sports video game background. So particularly with EA, obviously they've got lots of big sports titles. So it was valid that I needed some kind of sports intel along with that game intel. But for them, they're fascinated with the idea of having more than just having the kind of ownership and feeling that you own these virtual teams, these teams that you curate over time, is also having skin in the game. And they like that idea of kind of taking it to the next level and say, actually, not only do I believe my team is a good team, or my players are good players, or my strategy is a good strategy, but also I can have a bet on myself as well, and kind of that further level. And that's really what's kind of garnered the interest of some of the people coming in from the games industry.
So that's interesting about the actual betting side. So I was looking into a few of the things that you'd said and a bit about Playbook Fusion, because there's not too much out there at the moment because you are in the early stages. And the impression that I got was that it was going to kind of be more maybe tapping into that maybe football manager kind of thing, kind of free to play angle, but it's not. It's to get bettors betting essentially. It's not just kind of an engagement tool.
Correct, yeah. But it is, I guess what I'm appealing to is kind of, there's three main demographics of player, really. And the fourth one is the gamer. So actually, I'm putting the gamer to one side, someone who plays these management games who doesn't bet today. I'm kind of putting them to say that might capture those kind of players, but I'm not saying that's a kind of a core strategy, because I'm in the gambling space and I know what the captive audience that I'm looking after are looking at are the virtual sports player. That's obviously where my 20 odd years of experience is in, who aren't playing a game that is persistent. So there's no persistence from session 1 to session 2. There's no kind of a level of ownership and management. There's no kind of, as I said, kind of skin in the game in terms of that. So I know that there's a relatively passive experience that's generating really good money for operators and suppliers today that I think I can improve on. So that's the virtual sports player. And then the other two main categories really are the sports player, who knows about real world football, because football is going to be our first game, knows about which players are good, which players are in form, which teams are in form, which leagues these teams play, and all that kind of intel that they have. And I'm allowing them to put that in practice on a more frequent basis. And the fantasy bettor, who's kind of spent their time curating their best team. People in the UK mainly play fantasy for fun on the, with Premier League and those kind of apps. But obviously internationally, in the US market, where fantasy predicated live sport, like in the US with DraftKings and FanDuel, people are creating their teams of players from all different squads, real world players, and putting them into battle in competitions and winning prizes and stuff. So, and I can give them that experience, albeit with more frequency, because the games on Playbook Fusion will play every 2 or 3 minutes, not 3 months or 4 months a year like with the NFL, or 5, 6 months a year like the NBA, where there's lots of downtime in the season. I'm giving them an ability to use their knowledge of sport, on a highly frequent basis, just like with virtual sport. So I feel like I'm pulling on those 3 categories into this new portfolio of games. But also I have got the potential that the gamer who's now age appropriate, who's now 18, 21, whatever, in the relevant jurisdiction, who says, I know about these games, I know how to build squads, I like video games and all that mechanic. And now also I just want to have a few quid on myself or my, on a scoreline or whatever it may be. So I think that's the vision of Playbook Fusion, is to kind of, there's existing 3 big brackets of player, but also there's also the potential for operators to tap into maybe a new market, a new cohort of player.
So how long's this idea been in your head? On a lot of kind of business entrepreneurial type podcasts, you'll hear the interviewer ask, if you were to start a business tomorrow, what would you start that business in? Well, you've done just that only a few short months ago. So why go into this space? Is it because you see it as something that's lucrative, or was it that during your time at Inspired, you just saw that there really wasn't much in the gaming space that was tapping into the video game space? I mean, I see that Evo Play, for instance, have released a few kind of 3D platformer type games, which kind of that gamified experienced. But other than that, I can't think of too much. Is that what inspired you?
Yeah.
Pardon the pun.
It's okay. Yeah. So I think it's I think knowing that the market is there and how I felt I could take the virtual sports experience that I've got and apply it to something new. So I fully understand what it takes to get an RNG derived game live in the markets. I know about regulation and customers and platforms and revenues and all that kind of stuff. So I felt like I had a knowledge that other people from the game industry would stay away from, because they'd be like, oh no, the regulations are too onerous and we have to get licensed and all these things that people coming into the gambling industry would be concerned about. I don't have those concerns, because I understand what it's going to take. So kind of thinking, okay, I've got that base understanding. Now, how can I improve on that? But also thinking about, like I said, the fantasy and the sports player, and how will you real world football players and real world basketball players and cricket players in the future, and apply them in a game that allows people a perception of skill. So people obviously will curate their team and look at the real world performance, and kind of just like people used to do on Soccer Manager and Football Manager back in, when I was a lad. So it's kind of like using that ability. So I always wanted to take virtuals to the next level, applying a skill component to it, linking in the real world. And then when I started to talk to people, it became, and I guess it's always when you start something new, no one's going to tell you it's a duff idea probably, because everyone's kind of got a bit of respect for you and no one's going to say, but it's just kind of talking to operators, talking to potential partners. And it just started to kind of, the more I thought about it, the more I felt that this thing actually could be something new and fresh. And obviously now it's down to whether we can create the game that matches up to the vision. But I've kind of been curating on it for, probably 3 or 4 months or so. And now it's coming to pass and it's all systems go for us now.
So you've got all that kind of industry know-how and all the contacts, and you're there to spearhead the business forward. But how would you say your day-to-day is different as the CEO of a startup compared to your previous role where you're chief commercial officer of a massive company? That must be a massive step change for you, particularly given the fact you were there so long.
Yeah, it is different. I think because you basically got to, you're one of one to start with. I'm sorting out how the website's set up. I'm sorting the bank account out. I'm sorting contracts and offering people employment letters and all those kind of stuff, and doing HR. I'm kind of HR, legal, financial, all those things. So I'm an accountant by my background is in accountancy back in when I first got qualified. So I kind of got financial stuff, business plans. That doesn't worry me to any great degree. I'm kind of setting up the business. Yeah, it's a bit of a learning curve doing it myself, but I've now got a small nucleus of a good team around me who are helping me with these things. And also because I've been in the industry a while, pulling on people to either join the team or to kind of help me, just phoning up people, saying, look, what do you think about? I'm getting kind of good advice from people who I know from the industry, saying, look, I've got this idea. As an operator, how would you perceive it? Do you think it's a great idea or not? So just going to build those relationships over time, that has helped a lot. But yeah, the being the point guy is something I really enjoy, to be honest, because I'm able to make decisions without going through committee after committee or sign off for this and sign off for that. I can kind of move fairly nimbly, and that's been great. I think it's a fresh, after 25 years of being in a relatively big company, especially a US listed company, kind of having that freedom to make decisions and make change is really refreshing, and I'm really enjoying that part.
And who have you got in the team at the moment?
So I've got, I guess, the key two main individuals are Santiago Jamilo, who's coming from EA, so he gives me all that experience. He was involved heavily in FIFA and FIFA Ultimate Team, particularly, where he knows about football games and kind of what it takes to engage players and keep them playing. And then Jason Bradbury, who I used to work with Inspired about 10 years ago, probably. He knows about kind of up to date, kind of from a regulatory point of view, how to get RNG games live, working with operators, working with aggregators, and all that kind of stuff. So, and Jason knows about the gambling mechanic very much. So, I've kind of got the two main people, and then beyond that, I've got UX people and UI people building the kind of the framework and the wireframes and such of the gameplay. I've got maths people who've come in from the games industry, will understand in-game economy, because there's in-game currency in our games. So understanding how in-game currency works within video games and applying that into gambling games. And then beyond that, we've got a new production director who's going to kind of make sure that we have a plan and we deliver against the plan in terms of getting the game built to schedule, on time, on budget, and get it live and all that stuff. And then we've got technology as well. So we're kind of building the team out. I'm not just hiring 30 people and away we go. It's more about figuring out what we need as we go along, and bringing in brilliant people. And so far, I'm happy with the people we've got. We will need more, but obviously that will success breeds that need, if you like. So I'm happy to kind of build it as we go, rather than just kind of go out there and just hire a massive team. And Inspired, I had 100 people in my team, so I'm kind of used to that, but I don't think we need that right today at Playbook Fusion.
You touched on a few of them there, but I just want to dive into it a bit more about what the difficulties are of kind of translating, I mean, I say video games, but also mobile games, fantasy football, for instance, Football Manager, those kind of sophisticated mechanics, complex ecosystems. How do you get them into the linear and regulated gaming industry?
I think what we don't want to do with Playbook Fusion is create games that are so deep in terms of the level of knowledge and skill that you need to play them, that actually it would put off a big portion of the players. But if we want to make a game that is complex enough and deep enough, but certainly not too deep that it's going to take 2 years to build, and you're going to need a 60-page manual to understand how to play the game. So what we're kind of trying to build is a light touch management strategy game that's got gambling as part of it. And there's two key aspects to the game. One is ownership of the team, figuring out which players are playing well, put them in the right positions, understanding when there's new players available to buy the right players, or buy a pack that might reveal a new player or a new boost for your striker, or a better defensive record for your centre-back, or whatever it may be. So all the things that allow someone to create their team. And then at the point where they put it into a game, a match, then that's against either an AI team or a PvP, another player who's playing the game. And that's where kind of my team and say your team come against each other. We create some probabilities, they create some odds, and then we allow people to take a bet. So the kind of two key parts of the game. But I understand at the point where everyone's finished creating their team, that's where it becomes a gambling product, because that's where I lock it in. I say, this is my team. It's a 95 ranked team. Your team's a 97 ranked team. And therefore it'll create a set of odds and probabilities around that. So it's kind of, that's how I see kind of the vision and how the game works. But as I said, it's just about getting the right depth of a game that feels like it's strategic, feels like it's involved, has all those reasons to keep coming back and playing, but isn't so onerous that it's going to put people off and make them think, oh, this is way too complex. Because I know what virtual sports is like, which is really easy to understand. It's like, here's some odds, have a bet. Here's some odds, have a bet. I'm taking it to another level beyond that.
So to clarify, this first game is going to be a football game like the one that you've just described.
Yeah.
Is it leaning more in towards a skill game then?
It's skill in terms of how the team are produced. So me, Steve Rogers, I launched the game. I have my squad of 16 players. I make my best 11. I set my right formation. And then as I progress through a league, get promoted, I win games, I get some coins, I get some packs, I do all the strategic stuff. So there's the skill element in making my team as good as possible. But as soon as I submit my team into a match, it then locks the skill element. There's no more skill element. It's not like I'm playing the game like a FIFA, a PlayStation game or an Xbox game. At that point, my probabilities are locked in. My opponent gets matched against me, and then it's down to the random number to determine which team wins and what the scoreline is going to be based on the probability, just like virtual sports. So from a certification and regulation point of view, it's not a skill game. It's an RNG game with some probabilities, just like virtual sports. What happens pre-game is all of that kind of curating of a team that makes people want to own their team. They can name their team. They can pick their kit design, all this kind of stuff. So people feel like there's ownership of a virtual team, essentially. But it's not a skill game. No, it's an RNG derived probability game, essentially.
I can see now how that would feed into engagement and retention and keeping people dwelling on the site, and also getting them, if they can, of course, to bet as well. Does it also feed into the sportsbook personalization piece, or does it not quite sit there?
What do you mean by that? What do you mean to personalization?
As in, can this game be used to prompt bettors to have a more personalized user experience? Is there a case where you see that somebody's betting on, we'll say Liverpool because they're in the background there. They're betting on Liverpool. You can give them a prompt to say, look, there's this new game called X where you can build your own team. You can have Darwin Núñez and et cetera, et cetera. Or does it not quite fit there? Is it more of a kind of get them engaged, then added value after that?
I think it's what you've just said. I think it's about the engagement first, and then we can start looking at those kind of things where we have an understanding of what the player does in the real world sports betting, and we kind of link that into the game. And like you say, give them prompts. Say, Núñez is now available. He's got a 95 card available. Buy a pack and you might win him. So it's kind of, those kind of tie-ins to real world behavior are certainly possible in the game. I think the initial response I've had from operators who I'm talking to already are about the kind of how this could increase repeat visits to their site. And obviously that's another opportunity to plug them with either sports bets or casino offers or whatever it may be, and also to play the game. Because if people feel this game will have persistence, if you log in on a Monday, you made your team, that team's going to be there on a Wednesday, you'll be 8th in the league and you'll still follow that journey through. So it's going to have persistence, which I know is a big thing, especially in casino games. They're trying to get more that way. But also, and we'll have in-game mechanics such that if you log into the game 3 days in a row, we'll give you a gold pack. Then you open the gold pack and you might get a Mo Salah or you might get a whatever. So all those kind of reasons to keep coming back are going to be within the game. But having it for an operator whereby they've got a deeper level of engagement, there's reasons to keep coming back, there's got the persistent level, whether they bet on the game or not, but at least it's another visit to their site. So I'm seeing it more like a much stickier experience than maybe virtual sports has been in the past at that. Now, whether we link that to real world sport per your suggestion, I think that will probably be a second phase. But I think it's a good shout.
I can hear quite a lot of the Ultimate Team lingo from back in the day now. The gold packs, the silver packs, and what have you. If you can even tap into an nth of that success, it would be wildly successful in the betting industry, I'm sure. I can. So, what is something to pick up on in that answer was the fact that you're talking to operators. So this game, I believe, is scheduled to come out in Q4. I read. Is kind of operator input massive and significant in the development of these games that you're making?
Yeah, it's important that I've got an understanding of what operators want, but it's more about just refreshing those discussions and talking to them about how they position it. So would they position it with real football? Would they position it with virtuals? Would they position it on its own tab? So all those kind of site positioning questions I wanted to understand from operators. Also understanding from a gambling point of view, clearly the operators are thinking about gambling revenue in the main, so how they felt this game would appeal to them. And obviously, like I said, repeat play, more persistence, all those kind of things, but also they'll make margin on the betting. One other part of the game is that because it's got in-game currency, players will if they want to progress quicker through the game, will be able to use real money, just like with FIFA Ultimate Team, where people will get their real money wallet and use that to buy in-game currency, which then they can use to buy a player or a pack or a reward or whatever it may be, a boost or whatever. So for an operator, there'll be two elements to the revenue. There'll be revenue from the gambling net margin, but also there'll be revenue from people actually using their real wallets to buy. Now, with FIFA Ultimate Team, I think it's about 20% of the players actually get their money out, their real money out, and want to progress. I don't think these numbers in this game will be as high as that because it's predominantly a gambling game. But it is a secondary source of revenue for Playbook Fusion and the operators, is to say that people might use the game in a way that we haven't seen before, where people are willing to pay because they want to get out of Division 10 quicker and they want that striker and they want the pack and they want the boosts and the rewards and everything else that's kind of inbuilt within the game. So it's kind of it's got that secondary factor, which would be fascinating really to figure out how much that resonates with the gambler.
And where do you think, you suggested options there, but where do you think the game would be best positioned? Everybody who makes a esports type games wants an esports tab. Whoever makes arcade games wants an arcade tab. Yeah. Where do you think this would sit?
I think it's going to sit likely as a side game onto real football to start with, because people who play the game are likely to have a deep understanding of real football because we've got real players and real statistics and all that depth. So I see it as kind of a mini game within live football, but I also see it sitting, well, we've got one game going live. Obviously, the plan is to build out further games, different sports. So it's hard for me to secure a tab with one game. I recognise that. Yeah. So the fact is it might be a bolt-on to virtual sports. So you have virtual sports traditional, virtual sports on demand, and then you have these kind of management games that when I'm trying to build, Playbook Fusion is building a portfolio. So it might sit alongside virtual as well. But with a sportsbook mobile site, or that's where most of the revenue is going to come from, mobile rather than desktop, there is potential for windows in. So you could have a launch window from real football, you could have a launch window from virtuals, you could have it from mini games or esports or whatever. But the kind of you don't have to sit with just one window into the game. You can have a bunch of URL links that kind of feed in. So but yeah, it'll be obviously for us it's all about we want the game to have best positioning. So some of those operator discussions I'm having already, like, great, you want the game exclusive or first mover, then fine, but I want a great position within your sportsbook for the first 3 months to give me the best kind of chance of revenue success.
And a final question for me, because I've got loads more that come to mind about markets, the new products that you mentioned, actually rolling this out, all the rest. But then this would end up being, getting towards 45 minutes an hour. So I'll keep it tight for now, and then we can delve potentially in a future podcast into those kind of questions about. Yeah. So what's the long-term vision for Playbook Fusion? Is it, I'm guessing, to be a pioneer in a completely new space and vertical within the gaming industry?
That's right. Yeah, I think I've kind of given the vision out there to people. It's there, it's going to resonate. So now I've got to deliver on that. So that the short term is make a really compelling football game and build on the framework of that to create a basketball game and a cricket game with the likely second and third titles, because I know how well they succeed. But yeah, it's to own this sector, own this category, if you like, by being first to market, understanding the regulation, and taking it to the markets that I know well. So the UK, Italy and Greece, Brazil is going to be huge for us. Africa's obviously a massive football. They love their Premier League football out there, so we're having an Africa presence as well. And then the slightly longer term view is to push into the US market, where fantasy is such a big thing because it's predicated live sport, that having a American football game and a basketball game and a baseball game and such in the future. So that's the kind of 2 to 3 year probably vision to go after the US market, recognizing the regulations that they're a bit more onerous. But yeah, we have a lot to be getting on with, and I laser focused on getting this first game live with as far wide as operators as we can, because I want to own this space for the next 5-10 years. Having come up with the vision, it's kind of, I need to, myself and the team, we're going to deliver on this strategy and get this game live and in the hands of players.
And because we're still at that early stage, I'm guessing that you're not going to be exhibiting at the likes of Lisbon and G2E and Sigma, but will you be there in attendance? Will people be able to reach out to you and find you?
Yeah, so I've decided I'm going to be at Lisbon. We're securing a site for the new ICE in Barcelona in January next year. So yeah, we are going to start, just because I've now got kind of the design is is there. We're in development, so I can talk more freely about the design, how the game's going to play, and also I want to build those commercial interest levels. So yeah, certainly I'm going to be out on planes and in hotels and stuff to try and get customers interested and excited about the product as we build out to the first launches.
Steve, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
No problem at all. Thank you, William.
I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you want to watch more, why not subscribe to our channel somewhere here.